are injured, knowing that you can still train and get a similar effect. You don't have to lose fitness. So it's breakthroughs like this that just pave the way for other research.
So we were also talking when we were discussing what we were going to do for the show on blood flow restriction. Yeah, for the show. Yeah. That's what it says. It's not a show.
I'm sorry. It just tickled me. I was like, the show.
Yeah, you're the host. You're the hostess of a Facebook.
BX Live at Lunch, baby girl.
It's a TV show or a Facebook show.
It could be a TV show.
It could be, but
Should
people
be.
watch
Maybe
it
we'll get discovered. This is it.
Facebook.
That'd be Jason's dream.
That would be pretty funny, actually.
It would be
Boom. So if you need to get in touch with me, 803-720-6996. There's people to answer the phone, I hope.
I got you.
Calls are coming in right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Whoa!
Sorry. All right, we're gonna get
So we
back
decided to go with alternate forms of training to tell you that there are other things. So blood flow restriction in our book is just an alternate form of training that still allows us to make progress in a scenario that is not the most ideal if your body starts to break down or you're injured, right? Like I said, you can carry a lighter load. And there are other ways to do this. So with Stephanie being the endurance athlete and taking her clients through that, she's going to talk a little bit about training methodology and a little bit of variance in what you can do there. So give me a little bit of what you got.
So one of the things we do is for injured runners, for example, water running. We take them in the pool and we do real high intensity interval work running in a deep, or you could do shallow water, either one, deep or shallow water pool. And so you're getting that intensity, you're getting resistance, and that cardiovascular workout without the pounding and without doing further damage. So it depends on the injury. I mean, just the same as anything else. It's a case-by-case basis. But water running, we can get really high intensity. You have to work pretty hard to get your heart rate up in the water. So we use the high intensity interval training, and I think we'll also talk a little bit about Tabata. We kind of talked about that later. So kind of similar philosophy behind that. And the same with swimming and cycling. I mean, whatever you have to modify to keep that fitness, keep it going. So shorter, higher intensity intervals sometimes instead of those long rides. So it just depends on what's going on with the person. But
yeah. So how blood flow restriction would work with weight training is if you had a hip injury or leg injury and you couldn't actually carry the load of a squat, you may do something like a shark, wrap the belt around your waist so the load's not directly on the back, and then take the tourniquet, cut off the blood flow to the lower extremities, and do your squats there. And then from there, you'll get that blood flow into there, and then you'll still get a very similar effect. So when you're back to close to 100%, you're good to go.
Right.
So some alternate ways to doing that, so with strength training, is work around the injury. So if you're injured in a position in which your knee hurts, instead of doing an exercise where the knee is loaded, you can do the exercise where the leg is suspended in the air. So where you take weight off, so it's not a weight-bearing exercise. So with weight training, that's where we can go there. You can change the actual load, the direction of the load. You can still work around the extremity and try to find areas in that range of motion that do not hurt. So you're not training that direct range of motion that causes the discomfort.
Ellen says, hey.
Hey.
Yeah, so if you think of questions, type them in, especially while you're
Get
watching.
them at the bottom.
Yeah.
And so what she was talking about with the science of blood flow restrictions, she was mentioning that it's cool to hear breakthroughs and see breakthroughs like this. So another breakthrough that happened a good bit longer ago, right? Is that a good statement? A little bit longer ago.
Yeah.
But was the term, we use the term Tabata, but a lot of you may not realize that the term Tabata actually comes from the name of the doctor who did a study on how to get an equivalent effect for endurance athletes, but in less time. So how do you make it a little bit more efficient for yourselves? The Tabata research came up that a 4-minute bout of 20, or a 4-minute series of 20-second bouts, is that right? You have 4 minutes of 20-second bouts with 10-second rest period. But in that 20 seconds, you have to be at maximum capacity, right? to get the same cardiovascular effects as if you had had a cardio session of anywhere between 35 minutes to an hour.
Right.
So it's a 4-minute period. You get 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and it's not a restful 20 seconds. It's not a steady 20 seconds. It is your max effort for 20 seconds for 8 rounds.
Right.
Yeah. And when we're talking about the alternative methods for endurance training, that actually came up, especially with triathletes and those who may not have time to cycle.
Right. So basically, Jason and I were having this conversation earlier. Tabata or high intensity interval training or HIIT training. Tabata, like he said, is the last name of the guy that did the research, but generally what I refer to it as just high intensity intervals.
Yeah.
I think it's important for triathletes to realize once you reach a moderate fitness level, so like once you're moderately fit, those long and steady workouts, you're only going to see moderate gains, if any, once you reach that point. So those high intensity intervals are the only way you're going to actually see and make physiological improvements. So it is true. Long course racing is won at speed, or by having speed sub threshold, which would mean at that point which your lactate builds up in your bloodstream or you're in your muscles and you get that really intense burning and you can't go any longer at that pace. So it is true. Speed below that threshold will win the race. But the only way to improve that threshold is to go above and beyond it. So one of the things that I do to improve the threshold is first of all figure out basically where people's lactate threshold is, and then take them and go 120%, so heart rate training, 120% effort level of that lactate threshold, which is hard. That is hard. But basically, short intervals at very, very, very high intensity, you start to see physiological changes, increases in the size and volume of mitochondria, which help your body utilize carbohydrates and fats more efficiently. So basically that's your entire energy metabolic cycle. So with more mitochondria you get from high intensity training, you can improve your lactate threshold, and your body basically you're going to take a shortcut to energy production, and that's going to increase lactate threshold. So when we increase and we go beyond that point, we build up lactate, we can't go any further, we have to take that rest. So we commit to resting, taking a nice easy spin if you're on a bike, or stand or walk if you're running, and then back up. Kind of the same thing.
Yeah, so if you were able to watch last week when we talked about the principle of overload, that's where she kind of gets, that's where she's taking that position, where if you have a certain level and you're there, and you just train at that level, you will always stay at that level.
Exactly.
If you don't try your best to extend yourself to something that it's extremely hard or that may break you down further, where then you're not going to get any better. And the only way to get better is to extend past that level that you call comfort.
Yeah.
And so there are going to be other alternate methods to help you do that.
Yeah.
And for an endurance athlete to take a break from not say a break, but in their training, have a day where they have a high intensity, a sprint filled, maximum level workout, where it's not an hour long or 45 minutes, it might be 25 to 30 minutes. That's warm
up and cool down too.
Yes, exactly.
Everything.
That's the warm up, the cool down, the super explosive workout. They're going to see some good changes.
Yeah, oh definitely.
And then in the resistance training world, let's say someone is trying to lose weight, and I say resistance in the general population for someone who's not competing. If you're trying to lose weight and all you're doing is that same thing over and over again, the same 35 to 45 minutes, you will not see the maximum changes after about 6 or 7 weeks. The changes are going to be smaller and smaller. You have to make a change or an adaptation to your programming to see a bigger adaptation to your progress. And that would include, if it was 45 minutes of long distance running, you might do a HIIT workout or a sprint that will help with the adaptations for that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I hope so.
I think the three things that I try to impress on people for these workouts is that maximal means maximal. Like, you are giving it everything you have. You have to commit to the recovery and the rest
Yes.
during the workout and after. So when you do this kind of thing, this is not something you do one day and then the next day you go try to run again or go try to go on a long bike ride. This is like a commitment to do this workout, give it everything, and then maybe it's a recovery workout like an easy swim the next day for a triathlete, but it is not, like just keep rolling through the week. I mean, you need adequate rest for your body to recover. And then also, no matter what you're doing, technique never should be sacrificed. So whether you're in the gym, you're lifting, whether you are doing a Tabata workout, whether you're doing any swim, bike, run, whatever you're doing, you should never sacrifice technique for speed.
And so one thing she said also about recovery, and she didn't say it for a long period of time, but she mentioned you need to have the appropriate recovery within that workout.
Right.
So if you're doing maximum effort, and you put 100% in for 10 seconds, you need a minimum of a 10-second rest. Sometimes you need to have a 1-part workout, 3-part rest, so that you get recovered enough to do that 100% maximum effort over and over again. And then as you're able to do that, that's when your capacity to do more work in a shorter period of time increases. So it's 10-second sprint, 30-second rest, 10-second sprint, 30-second rest. And what she means is at the end of that 20 minutes that you may have done that maximum effort workout, the next day you're going to be tired. You're not going to be able to perform that maximum effort again. So when she says recovery swim, this is pretty much getting blood flow in there to help the body to repair itself.
Right. Something easy.
Yep. And not maximum effort back to back, which can be dangerous.
Right.
Right? And
Anybody
then,
have questions? Nobody?
okay. And the technique not being sacrificed. So here's the thing with technique being sacrificed. At the point where you're doing that maximum level effort during that HIIT workout, at the point when your technique starts to break down and maximum effort has to be surrendered to do the technique is the point in which you probably should stop. Yeah.
You're not going to see any benefit beyond that.
Correct.
I mean, you've maxed out. You've reached the point where that's what your body can handle, and that's
and once you've
adequate.
maxed that part, you've started to change the energy system with your training.
Yeah.
So this also works for changing the energy system that you're training as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's basically talking about VO2 max, which we don't need to talk about today. We'll do
That's
that other
it.
time.
That'll be a whole nother
Well,
episode.
that could be like a couple part series.
Yeah, it could
really.
be fun though.
Yeah, it could be fun. Actually.
If you have any questions about today, please feel free to put them in the comments below, and we will do our best to answer those either in the comments or in the next episode. So we thank you guys for watching this episode of BX Live at Lunch. We will see you next week on Wednesday
Around this time.
around this time.
12 o'clock hour.